Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is David Novak. A few days ago, Shelley Swearingen did a video which entailed her moving her books from one place to another, and then she was looking at them a little bit. And I thought that I would do something similar, but relegating myself to books about China or having something to do with China. And the reason for that is less that I am reorganizing. I wish I could do that. We are so jammed for space that I have everything kind of piled up upon each other. And I have one section that is for books about Asia or from Asia. And China, of course, is in there. And so I went through trying to pull out what books I have on China or from China, because I would like to think a little bit more seriously about what I want to read next. Not next, exactly next. I already have my TBR, my immediate TBR sort of set, but just in a broader range where I would like to see my reading go, particularly as it pertains to China. So I've been reading China Between Empires by Mark Edward Lewis. This is the second volume in a series published by Harvard about the history of Imperial China. So this was the first book, and I had tried to read it years ago and didn't get too far. I got 100 and some pages into it and then set it aside. This time I read it, finished it, and have found that my overview of Chinese history is really shaping up. It's really improving, thanks to this, and now thanks to the second book. It's a series of 6 books, the first 3 of which are written by Mark Edward Lewis. And I am planning to read those 3, well, I'm 1.5 through, and then possibly read the next 3, the final 3, which are by different authors, each by a different volume. We will see about that. But as things are falling into place for me, I'm thinking about what else I should read. For example, 8 years ago, I was reading this, a book of literary criticism. It may well be something like the first book of literary criticism in the world or something like that. And let's see, I got more than halfway, and I was reading it in San Francisco at the time that Donald Trump became elected president. He won the election, and I set the book aside and never got back to it. And if I go back to it now, I would have to start again at the beginning and take it all the way through. But because I had such a positive experience with this book in doing that, it is imminent on my docket. I would really like to return to it. I have in the past read other books about literary China. Back in the day, this was everybody's go-to book for Chinese poetry, and I've read this a couple of times, but not in probably 20 years, and I wonder if I should reread it. And he has a lot of other books, and I just pulled these as representative examples. I think they're all worth reviewing again. Back when my blog was up at my website, there are just little occasional bits of literary criticism, which he calls from a huge variety of sources. And I extracted all of those and had a section, a post that had nothing but that. And that is the one thing that I regret with my website going down. I believe that I have it typed out somewhere, probably in the basement. I'm not sure what there is more current. I've in the last couple of years, I've made an effort at reading Chinese novels. So I read The Plum in the Golden Vase a couple of years ago, and then just this year I read the the Monkey King. I forget what the Journey to the West, and I have others that I want to read next year. I'm thinking of doing the Dream of the Red Chambers, or however you translate that title. And I tried reading C.T. Hsia, Hsia, who back in the day was revered as a literary critic presenting Chinese literature to the white audience, I would say. And I could not get behind his writing style, and the copy I had was kind of smelly, so I just got rid of it. The trouble I'm finding is I'm not really sure with contemporary things where to go. I was looking at some works of a Chinese poet that I'm learning names through these books, and there's a nice 2-volume Cambridge edition of the poet. Each volume is $40, and maybe it will be worth my plunking that down at some point. But it's a hard call for me for a book of poetry. So I don't really know. I have other books of poetry, say in the Chinese original or with Bopomofo. All of that stuff is down in the basement. I've talked about how years ago I was reading the Debate on the Constitution, a Library of America 2-volume set, and was really enjoying it. I probably got a quarter of the way through, or at least a quarter of the way through the first volume, and I took ill and was fairly ill for a month or so, and that was another case of events intervening, and I just put it aside and never got back to it. Another thing that I had been doing had been working on my Chinese daily, just the writing of it, and making improvement, making steady improvement. It's a language that you can't just get by osmosis. You really need to practice it. And so it's been 20 years since I've done that. Maybe one day I will get back to it, but I don't think so. It's just, I talked about an article recently by Umar Haque with the way things are going in the world. Most of our dreams and stuff we have to expect will come to naught. And that is one of my many failures in life. But nevertheless, having things in, say, a bilingual edition, nevertheless pleases me. So I pulled out these books. I am pretty sure that I have read these, the old Burton Watson translations. And this is what the set used to look like when I was young. There was a bookstore in Evanston, Great Expectations, and I think a couple of these came from that. And I longed to have the whole set. And I think they've just repurposed it, probably changed the transliteration and maybe made corrections. I'm pretty sure I've read these, but my trouble with Chinese literature of this sort is none of it has really stuck. And I am hoping that as I get a better grasp on the whole history, that I will be able to contextualize everything better. And so I'm not sure if I should revisit this stuff, because if you asked me about these writers, I wouldn't know what to tell you. In fact, years ago when I took that first trip to China, these volumes were in bookstores. I had to scour several different bookstores, and this was all I could find. Nice bilingual texts. Most of this stuff I have in other editions, like Penguin. So the Analects, for example. I think actually the Analects I did read in this, but here's the Dragon Carving and the Literary Mind. And I would much rather read it in the edition that I just showed than this one. But in my Mark Edward Lewis, this book has been mentioned a few times, the Spring and Autumn of Lu Buwei, I guess. I'm not sure how you say it. And so, since I do have this in the full thing, it's kind of a odd series the way they did things. And my Chinese is not anywhere to the level of enabling me to read this stuff. I would have to go and live in a Chinese-speaking country for a couple of years to try to get myself up to snuff. And I don't foresee that happening in my life at this time. But regardless, I have the books, and so it's something to keep in mind. This is also from, I believe, the late Han. Just looking at it, I realized that you can see I picked it up for $2, not knowing what it was, what the heck it was. Chinese literature is so vast, it's really hard to get your mind wrapped around it without having some kind of an advanced degree. So it's called Balanced Discourses, and let's just see what it says about it. Balanced Discourses, or hereafter Discourses, was written by Shugan, I don't know how you say that, Xugan, at the end of the Eastern Han Dynasty. Discourses is a work of political commentary, the aim of which is to expound normative principles, trace their sources in the classical teachings, and attribute these principles to the way of the sages and worthies. Shu is thus classified under Confucian thinkers in the philosophers division of all bibliographical lists of the standard histories, except for that of Songxi, where he is listed among miscellaneous writers. So I don't know. It's something that is worth looking at, possibly after I have a better grasp on the history. Somehow I have a good number of books. And let me see. Readings in classical Chinese philosophy. I'm sure that I just picked this up somewhere. Oh, this is a little anthology, so it contains all of those others that I showed you. It actually might be worthwhile. Oh, and here's a little chart to compare Wade Giles with Pinion, which is kind of handy, possibly. I'm looking for a table of contents that I can show you. Yeah, so you can see who it's all got in there. So that actually might be great. There's a little introduction as a start to get back into this kind of stuff. As I say, I've read some of them. I mean, these are the only two books that I could say I'm familiar with. The I Ching, which through usage when I was young, I've probably read it through multiple times. And then the Dao De Jing, in my preferred translation. The Shambhala edition, it's John C.H. Wu. Those are the only two books that I have any level of security with. As I say, everything else just disappeared. This is another book about Chinese philosophy. So Confucius, the first teacher, Mozu, Chuangzi, and so forth. So this might be good for an overview, but I'm not really sure that that's where I want to go. And then I'll show you just some other books that I happen to have around. This is The Man Who Sold a Ghost. It's short stories, and I loved these stories, translated by the Yangs, who were the earliest translators for the, what was it called, Peking Foreign Language Press or something like that. And this, of course, was a copy that I had in Taiwan. Very nice. I just love all of the stories in here. I think I tried to put one of them into one of my poems. And back then I also got this author. And there is a Penguin edition, which I picked up not all that long ago. I never liked his stories as much as the ones in the other. There's one in here that I absolutely love, the Rakshas and the Sea Market. That's my favorite one. And so on the joy that that story has brought me, it may well be worth going into this, and I think it's something that I could do. The stories are a lot of the sort of shape shifting or shape changing. Woman turns into a fox, that kind of thing, which all old literatures seem to be replete with. So that's possibly something. I thought I would show you some of my Tai Chi books. Of course, everybody in this country, supposedly there were 3 teachers that brought the genuine Tai Chi to America. One was Cheng Man-ching, and almost everybody teaching tries to claim some sort of lineage from him. There was a teacher that went to San Francisco, I believe, and one that went to Chicago area, and that was Master Liao, who was my teacher. This is another failure of mine. I am far off from the way. But for studying about Tai Chi, there are classics, and these are the essential ones. And the book goes into a lot greater detail, explaining the art form, the mechanics of it. Of course, no book is a substitution for a good teacher, but if you have a good teacher, then book knowledge can help. So I thought I would just show you Master Cheng Man-ching. People do not like this edition because it was edited down. Nothing essential was taken out of it, and the translation is much better than the other edition which existed. I had that, and I think I got rid of it. So this I just can't, and all of Douglas Wile's books I cannot speak highly enough of. He is a genuine scholar and a Tai Chi practitioner, player. Don't know much about him on a personal level. He was in New York. This was Sweet Chi Press, and I don't think that it even exists anymore. I'm not seeing a good. Well, you can see Sweet Chi Press, and there are a handful of little mass market sized volumes of the Yang family transmission of Tai Chi, that sort of thing, that are really nice. But this book is indispensable. And then he he compiled other Tai Chi classics. Really, I don't think there's anything in here that is essential if you have these other things. But again, he takes everything from a much more scholarly perspective. So, well, I might as well segue into the sort of Taoist alchemy stuff. Back when I was studying Tai Chi, one of the things that we frequently did was meditate. And this is a very interesting book on meditation, Yin Shi Tzu, and it was written in, I think, like 1950 or something. He was 80, and it's different to any book about meditation you'll ever read. Meditation is something that I have never excelled at. Adjusting your sleep. After exerting yourself physically and mentally, you need to rest in order to renew your energy. We can regard sleep as the longest period we have to really rest. An ordinary person should sleep for 8 hours. Exceeding this will make our spirit lose clarity, which is inappropriate for meditation, and so forth. So, Tranquil Sitting was the title. I don't know. I would imagine it's still around somewhere. and then you get into the sort of sexual alchemy. So Douglas Weil also translated these texts, just old texts which are worth reading. I read these a long time ago. It unfortunately has double columns, which is a format that I really dislike. So the development of Chinese sexology. So if you're going to study Qigong, that sort of thing, this is just an aspect to that. And I think that Mantak Chia is the go-to person, or was. I don't know if he's still alive or not, but back in the day, he was the one that everybody went to for the sexual stuff. And his books were, what was it, Legion. He had so many books. And as I say, I've never really gotten into his stuff. I don't even know why I have that one. And this is Taoist Alchemy. And I've read this book, and it's kind of just really hard to follow. I mean, here you get the circuit. When you practice Tai Chi, you're following the circuit as well. And we'll see if I get back to that. And a friend of mine on Facebook highly recommended the Carnal Prayer Mat. I think it was at the time I was reading The Plum in the Golden Vase. He said, "Oh, this is a very good book." And I picked it up and have not bothered reading it. This strange and delightful book, one of the most vivid texts on the shelf of Chinese erotica, shows Chinese society in a state of undress. Patrick Hanan's translation is illuminating, fluent, and exhaustive. Not only scholarly, but sexy. Well, that was said by Paul Thoreau. I don't know how much credit I will give him. But the next one is from Anthony Yu, who translated the Journey to the West. Let me see what he has to say. Contains one of the funniest episodes in all Chinese literature. With superb acuity of hearing, Hainan has caught the author's sardonic tone, the tongue-in-cheek apology for outlandish ideas and practices, and the uproarious or deadpan humor of both speeches and narration. We are indebted to him for great fun. So his journey was so wonderful to read. I would trust his opinion on this. And then this I heard about somewhere and picked up, and now I'm glad I did not try to read it. Sexual Life in Ancient China. It is supposed to be a very good book. And because it has to do with ancient China, it may well go onto the docket after I finish my Harvard series, or at least the early volumes of the Harvard series. Yeah, so it talks about the later Han and then the early dynasties. So it would be a nice complement, I think, to the ones I'm reading. So that is definitely a possibility. Back into, I picked this up somewhere and have read little bits of it. It's a very nice edition, but it's not very practical. The Spiritual Pivot. And let me just see what it has to say. I've read some of it, but got nothing out of it. Transformation of human society comes from intuitive genius which sees design, beauty, and harmony for the individual in relation to people, to earth, and to heaven, which can be expressed and taught. Teachings recording such genius were attributed to Huang Di, the Yellow Emperor, and his ministers, and so on. So this, I think it was the University of Hawaii. They have a lot of stuff of this sort, and I somehow lucked out upon this, but so it's in a lot of dialogues. Okay, so dialogues, and I've read the Hippocratic stuff, and ancient medicine or ancient medical texts are not something that I really am that interested in. Now, I showed this one recently. I did a video about Casey Chang, and this is a book that I would like to read. My experience or exposure to China over the last couple of decades has been much less literary than culinary or gastronomical, I guess one would say. And I would like to see anthropologically what he comes up with. Some of this may have been superseded, but he was brilliant, and I think it will be worth my while. And there is some just beautiful writing in here, or quoted writing of ancient writers about food. And this is a more recent treatment about food. I don't think it's an anthropological take on it. Well, it goes back through history, though, and I've read a little bit of this and thought it was very good what I read. So I do want to get to this one too. I would probably read those two sort of in tandem. Now, this really surprised me. I bought one of these books, and I'm not sure which one it was. It might have been this, and was really disappointed in it. Did not like the guy's writing at all. And then I found I have two books by this guy. And it's not good when I don't like somebody's writing style. But possibly after I get through the Harvard books, I can take a second look at it and maybe get something more out of these. So that's a possibility. Well, we're coming to the end of things here. These are the theater books that I have. 20 years ago, the Spoleto Festival in South Carolina, I think it is, did the Peony Pavilion, a complete version of it. And I have a book. I did my own take on the story. It's not a translation, it's just a retelling. And I used the Cyril Birch edition. And I like Cyril Birch very much. I have this book where he translates different scenes from different plays. And I thought it was a different book because I have a book, I think, by him where he talks about Chinese literature and says very interesting things about it. Unless I'm conflating him with something else, I managed not to pull. I have Burton Watson talking about Chinese parallel prose, and it could well have been something from that or something from the art of Chinese poetry. I'm just not sure. It makes me want to revisit this stuff. But I do like Cyril Birch, so he did that. We have the Peach Blossom fan elsewhere because it does not belong to me. And I found this in somewhere or other and just picked it up. I don't like to read plays, but I was not aware of this at all, never heard the title, and so I thought it would be worth looking at. Possibly I was in the back of my mind thinking, well, maybe I could do a version of this as well. I'm not really intending to write anymore, but if I live so long and some kind of impetus propels me, I could see picking up the pen again for the dramatic art. And then I have this, which was recommended to me, and I have not really gotten into that either, but it looks like it might be worth going for if I'm going to read a play at all. So let me get back to Cyril Birch. There's an anthology of Chinese literature, and now that I'm doing the history, it might be something also that I can try to get into. It looks to be a combination of everything historical works, poetry, prose essays. So this one goes up to the Tang Dynasty, I think. And then there is a volume 2, which I picked up for a song somewhere in a hardbound edition. And it bugs me that I have this in paperback and the other one in hardbound. But of course, none of it matters. What matters is the reading of it. And I do see some potential here now, now that I am reading Mark Edward Lewis. And if I continue with this, as I say, the best laid schemes oft go astray. And I know that very well. All it takes is a little bit of illness. Years ago at the Humanities Festival, Nathan Sivan showed up and gave a very rousing lecture, and I got to talk to him a little bit, and I think he sent me an article that he had written, which is in my file cabinet, which I should reread. And this is an interesting book making comparisons between Greek and Chinese science and medicine. And it turns out that Jeffrey Lloyd is G.E.R. Lloyd, who did the volumes in a series that Moses Finley edited, 2 volumes about ancient Greek history. And I like his writing very much. His history of the Greek science is marvelous. And he went on, he became something, and may still be, an expert in comparative studies between ancient Chinese and ancient Greek. And I have 4 books here, and I've read 2 of them and can't remember a thing. And you're going to see they're kind of really weird with their titles. So you have, Adversities and Authorities. And then here you have The Ambitions of Curiosity. And then you have The Delusions of Invulnerability. And here you have Ideals of Inquiry. I think this is a little bit broader than just China and Greece. Some of the others might be as well. He's a very credible scholar, and this one I have not looked at, but it's something indeed that I hope to. One must do things in the proper order. Didn't Monty Python say it's not just a matter of saying the words, you have to get them in the right order? And so the last things that I have here are, I was watching a video just a couple of days ago, a live stream on the channel of Danny Haifong, or Haifong. I'm not sure. He's Vietnamese American, dealing with current events. And there's been a lot of talk about Gaza, the genocide which is occurring there, and then the broadening of the war done by the state of Israel. And I'm trying to keep on top of that. He interviewed Scott Ritter, who I remember liking years ago, and I forget the context. And I was shocked to see how Scott Ritter has aged since when I remember him way back, probably during the Gulf War time. But we have all done that. And he talked about, and I will put a link to that video, that live stream, and it comes at about 1 hour and 40 minutes into it, where he starts talking about the loss of Russian experts. Here they were talking about the Ukraine, how in the old days, the, I don't know what it was, Foreign Service Department or whatever, had all of these experts who really knew a lot of stuff, and how that old body of knowledge has basically been dismantled. And so now you have bigger departments filled with people who don't really know as much. They might know a little bit of this or that, but they don't have any kind of comprehensive picture and don't have any particular understanding of what's going on inside Russia. And it just reminded me of a book that I read many years ago that I want to reread, The China Hands. And this deals with the Foreign Service officers who, it says, and what befell them, predicted that China was going to be lost to the communists, that Mao was going to come in, and nobody wanted to hear that. And so they were all vilified. I think they all wound up losing their jobs. And I want to revisit this. I remember it being a very good book. Don't know much about E.J. Kahn. He's not a China expert. He was a sort of hack writer, I think. I mean, he took jobs for the money, but I think he did a good job. That's the impression I have. He did a very good job at the things he touched upon. So I would like to look at it again. I really did enjoy it. At the time when I was younger, I read, I think, now I can't remember their names. Oliver, somebody who did a history. I read interesting. You can see these are other books by him. So you can see he's all over the place. I bet some of these other ones are worth looking at. I just wonder if he, well, let's see, I'm just trying to see if Clubb, was it? Oliver Clubb? I really can't remember. I haven't looked at this stuff. Well, I'm not going to take any more time. I'm overdue on this. And then a lot of the book talks about John Service, and he was a very admirable China hand, and these apparently are actually his dispatches, and I want to read these. I picked this up somewhere and just have never gotten to it. Probably the thing to do would be to read the China Hands first and then follow this up for a little bit of modern history. So this is the bulk of my Chinese library, and I would like to build it, I suppose, with more literature, translations of poets, but it's a step that I will not rush into and will proceed cautiously with, particularly if the price tags on these things are more than I care to pay. I don't know if there was anything to be gotten out of this, but I thought I would show that off. Now I have to put everything back. We shall see. Surviving may become an ordeal, one never knows. But while we exist within a relative comfort zone, I am going to try to proceed. I am going in different directions at one time, but I am so delighted with the progress I have been making through the Harvard series of history that I will definitely want to build upon it. Thank you very much for stopping by my channel.